Hey guys, it's John Adamson, the Rehab Documentation Guru, and I am just going to make a video today on why should you even listen to me? Why should you want to listen to me as a rehab documentation specialist, expert, whatever? And I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to actually give you more than I give in my courses as to my background. So it all began back in 2007. I was working at the time for a home health agency. I had just completed seminary the previous year, and we weren't sure exactly what I was going to do with my seminary degree. I had pastored during seminary, but kind of had the heebie-jeebies about going back into ministry for various reasons. That's another story. And I also had a growing family, and really in the ministry, it's hard to support a growing family, and churches just don't pay their pastors enough, generally, unless you're Joel Osteen and you have a mega church, which is another story. So anyway, it was 2007. We decided we were going to move. We were living in southern Indiana, and we moved up to Rapid City, South Dakota, and started with a company called Aegis Therapies, which is a very large provider, or was larger. It's diminishing now. But I started with Aegis Therapies, and that is a long-term care SNF Part A therapy provider, generally, mostly. And I started with them as a traveler, and then I took a full-time job. Now, sorry guys about the shakiness. I'd come from a home health background, and so my documentation for long-term care SNF was not good at all. And I had a very excellent clinical specialist who oversaw our district, and she schooled me on documentation. I needed it bad. So this is in 2007. And after a while, I finally started getting it. Things started clicking. And then in 2009, I'd been with Aegis for a couple years. I had a new clinical specialist who had been my boss as a rehab program coordinator or director of rehab. And she started a documentation review group. This is when back in the time when we could still group our patients under Part A, so you could maintain your productivity and have occasional time to do some professional stuff. So we got together once a week, we reviewed documentation and kind of passed judgment on it and gave feedback to the directors of rehab in the area. And that was a really good thing for me because it helped me develop more documentation awareness than I had. At the same time, I started taking on a more clinical role in the building I was in. I wouldn't say I was a very great clinician. In fact, I probably had better clinicians that I worked with, but I wanted to grow at that point, and so I took on this role, and it helped me develop. And then in 2010, early on in 2010, I became a documentation, well, shoot, I just blanked on what the name was. It was a designation that Aegis had, master clinician. That's what it was. I became a documentation master clinician as recognized by my company. And that was through development and expertise in the area. But I'll tell you what, back in 2010, early, I didn't know a tenth of what I know about documentation and regs and whatnot today. But anyway, I was moving in that direction. And then late 2010, we moved to Virginia. I took a job as a clinical specialist over a district and then over an area. And a lot of that job revolved around clinical education, documentation compliance, appeal letter writing, guidance on documentation for all the therapists in the area, which there were over 100. And so I really had to be pushed in that area to even develop more expertise. So I had a full-time job in 2010 at that point of being a documentation expert. Now, fast forward to 2013, I'm thinking, you know what? I really like this thing on documentation. Sorry, guys, late in the day, I'm having word finding problems. I need a speech therapist to reach through the video and teach me. So anyway, I really wanted to make more of a career related to documentation. So what happened was I was starting to put together a course, but it was going really slow. And then my son, one of my sons who's disabled, got extremely sick, almost died, was in the hospital for 5.5 months. During that time, I stayed with him a lot of overnights, went home about 2 or 3 times a week. And at that time, because I had nothing else to do but watch him in bed, and he's not verbal or anything, and he wasn't very receptive during that time, I wrote my course, my documentation bootcamp course, and started to deliver that in February of 2014. So I've been teaching that course for a while, still growing in knowledge and expertise in the area. And then December of 2016, I took a job as a clinical and compliance specialist for a company called Renewal. And so my whole job now, 40 hours a week, is doing appeals management, additional development requests, education on documentation compliance, looking up regs. So, you know, they say that 10,000 hours makes the expert. If you spend 10,000 hours at anything, as long as you're consistent and pushing yourself in that 10,000 hours, you will become an expert. And that's where I'm at. Back in 2015, I think it's been that long. Now I'll have to look back. I also became a geriatric clinical specialist through the APTA. So I honed my clinical skills, I honed my documentation skills, and thus at this point, I can teach you. And I think you should listen to me, number one, because I am a PT, not a nurse who's reviewing therapy documentation. And no knocks on nurses who have been at it for a while. They understand what they're talking about, but they really don't have the intricate knowledge of therapy documentation that any one of the disciplines would bring, because we have a little bit more knowledge of each other than nursing has of us or we of them. So that would be one reason to listen to me. The other reason is that I'm very clinically oriented, and being a GCS has pushed me, stretched me, made me more clinically aware. There's definitely gaps in my knowledge and clinical, like anybody. But anyway, I think I bring a little bit more expertise than somebody who hasn't gotten a specialty designation. So I can really focus on the clinical aspect of documentation as well as the compliance. And of course, that's my specialty now for my full-time job. So I think that's why you should listen to me. The other reason is that my videos are not nearly as dry as the ones that you've seen on documentation and compliance. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of very educated people who teach on documentation who do YouTube videos, but you can hardly watch them without falling asleep. And yeah, I'm sure some of my videos are snooze-worthy or get a little snoozy if I start to ramble on too much. But, you know, I'm talking to real people about real documentation on real patients. And sometimes it's funny. And I think that it should be noted as such. And sometimes there's passion behind it. And I think that's important to bring up. So anyway, those are the reasons I think you might want to listen to what I'm saying about documentation. And I appreciate those of you that actually listen. And I'm hoping that you're seeing it in your documentation. It's getting better. You're seeing that even maybe your approach to your patients is getting better, more clinically minded, and that's important. Anyway, if you like my videos, please subscribe. I probably at some point, because I want to keep the content coming regularly, but as you can imagine, it's a time commitment. I may figure out a way where people can donate to the YouTube channel itself to keep it viable for me to do this on a regular basis. And I've been really trying to do videos every other day, sometimes every day lately, with a long hiatus between my initial ones. And you can tell there's a long hiatus because my hair is a little darker, and also I was a bit heavier then. So anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good day.